Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Nahmaduhu wa nusalli ala rasulihil kareem. So inshallah in these lessons we're going to be discussing الطعن. So what do we say? The hadith maqbool was a sahih, sahih li ghayri, sahih li dhati, sahih li ghayrihi, hasan li dhatihi, hasan li ghayrihi. Then we're going on to mardud. Okay, and what is mardud? Mardud is a hadith which is not acceptable because of one of two reasons. Either a break in the chain is saqt, or there's a weakness in the narrator. It's called الطعن. Now in ta'an, there's two types of, there's the ta'an we'll go through in detail. We went through saqt, and we said saqt zahira, saqt khafi. Okay, so you have maqbool and you have mardud. And then we went through previously the saqt zahir, mursal, mu'allaq, mu'adal, or munqati, or the khafi. Then we have mudallas and we have mursal al-khafi. And then the second type, the second reason, the second cause of the hadith being mardud is when you have a ta'an. You have a ta'an fi rawi. You following? Okay. Now, yes, following? Okay. So now what causes this ta'an? Ta'ana yat'anu ta'ana literally means to get a spear and hit somebody in the chest or hit somebody in the stomach. It's called a ta'an. So basically means that narrator has been mat'un, meaning he's been accused of, not only accused, but he's been proven to have these faults. So imma an yakuna likidhbir rawi. So sometimes the ta'an, that this rawi is mat'un, this rawi has been challenged, this rawi has been, his credibility has been removed. Why? Kidhbir rawi. Yeah, kadhibir rawi, two masters. What does this mean? The rawi has lied. Okay. Now this kidhbir rawi is two possibilities. We will say this rawi is kadhib, and the hadith he narrates, all of his hadith will be rejected. But even in there's two things. One is the actual hadith he lied in. And the actual hadith we have evidence he has lied in. This one. Al-hadith alladhi kadhaba fihi. Correct? So if he has been proven to lie in that one hadith, either he got caught, we started questioning him, and he got cornered. That you didn't hear from him, did you? Because you never met him. He wasn't there when you went there. Or you never met him. Yes, you did meet him. You did meet him, but you never heard it. I was in that gathering as well. He never narrated that hadith. He got caught. So now he's not to be lied. So that one hadith itself is now unacceptable. But because of him lying in hadith, his credibility goes down the drain. So even his other hadith, which we don't have evidence of him lying in, even that is categorized as mat'un. So in theory, it is possible that a rawi has lied in hadith, and there's another hadith that he has narrated is authentic. But we won't take that risk. Because once he has lied in hadith, his credibility goes down the drain. It's like, for example, you got a court case. Once a witness credibility goes down in one aspect, everything drops. Because we can't trust anything that person has said. But usually what happens is that the kid is not proven in every hadith that he narrates. It's proven in 1, 2, 3, but that's enough. When he's lied in 1, 2, or 3, we can't trust anything that person has said. Are you following? So the first form of ta'an is when a person lies, kadhib al-rawi. When the rawi has been proven and established to have lied in a hadith. So that hadith itself is rejected, and every other hadith is also rejected because of the probability of him lying. Everybody understand? So the first reason a rawi is mat'un, his narration is not, his question is because of his kidhb, him lying. Understood? Any questions regarding this? So the question here is that we said in Hasan li ghayrihi, and I mentioned to you that we said Hasan li ghayrihi, it is a weak narration, and there are multiple chains. Then what will happen? The narration can go up from da'if to Hasan li ghayrihi. Correct? We said that, didn't we? Yes? However, I mentioned there that the da'af must be munjabira. Because there are certain weaknesses which are patchable. Let's say, for example, you got a glass. If it's shattered to pieces, you can't put that back together, can you? But if you have a small crack, you can probably put glue on it and fix it together. But similarly, if the hadith has a crack, you can glue it together, make it hadith li hasan li ghayrihi. But if it's shattered to pieces, it's gone. So some faults in a rawi or a narrator is such that you can't ever patch it up. This is one of them. You can't patch a hadith up. You understand? So these hadiths are never ever used for anything. You can't use these hadiths to make a hadith hasan li ghayrihi. Are you following? A good question. Okay. Now moving on, the next one is kadhibur rawi or kidhbur rawi. What does that mean? He's actually lied. Number two, تهمته بذلك أي تهمته بالكذب. You accuse him of kadhib. What does that mean? That he narrates, so two things. Either it's tuhma fil hadith. We can't prove it, but we've got a very, very strong hunch. Meaning basically, we can't convict him in court, but we know he's lying. But we can't prove it. Like he says something which is like innamal a'malu laysa bin niyat. So where did that come from? We know that's not true. But we can't prove that he's not heard this. That's called tuhma fil hadith. So it's or you get what I'm trying to say? So there's a hadith, we can't prove that he's lied in it, but we have a very, because based on other evidences, we have a very strong hunch that this person is lying. He's got a chain, but we know that it doesn't add up. He made it, because you can make a chain up. I can make a chain, my own chain up. I make a hadith up from me to the Prophet. I can make a chain up and lie in that. You can't prove I'm lying. But you know that it doesn't really make sense. And I'm very particular, and I don't make a mistake. But you know that this is not really, he's made this up. We can't prove it, but we know it's wrong. That's called tuhma fil hadith. Do you understand? So here it is proven guilty. So he's actually proven guilty in one hadith, and here it is tuhma that he's done lies. So just to be fair, we've made a different name for it, so that we can say, well, he's not proven to have lied, but the evidence is very, very strong, even though there's a lot of things pointing towards him lying. So therefore, it's tuhma fil hadith. That there's a tuhma that he's lied in hadith, but you can't prove it. But it's very, very, not just all accusation of any evidence. You got it's pointing towards it, but it's not proven. Are you following me? Okay. So now we have here, why do people lie in hadith? Like why do you make up a lie in a hadith? So there are many reasons here. If you look at it here, one is targhib. Like for example, like some people, like there's some people who are actually pious people, or they had good intentions, and they didn't realize the implications of what they were doing. So I give you an example. When I was young, it was like obviously like, we decided, okay, we come into study right now. So then we thought, okay, let's become a bit, try to be pious and that kind of stuff. Let's try to do good things, right? So we said, okay, we learned, okay, after Fajr we read Surah Yasin. At night, that's okay. Every morning we read Surah Yasin. At night we read Surah Tabarak. So we said, okay, after Fajr you read this, after Isha you read this. So another person was studying. So he said to us, I said to him, well, what do you do after Zuhr? He said, find out. So we thought, okay, maybe there must be something to read after every Salah, isn't it? So then he made up something. he made up something. Said, okay, after Zuhr you read this, after Asr you read this, after Maghrib you read this. Right? So he made it up. Right? And then after he told us, I just made it up because I thought you wanted to do something good. So I thought, let me make something up so you do it. Now obviously it was a bad intention. It was okay, these people want to do something good. Let me make something up for them to do. So he made one, read this surah after Fajr, read this surah after Zuhr, read this after Asr. At least I'll read Quran, isn't it? Now obviously, that's not, some people, but this is I'm thinking a joke right now, but it happened in the past. There were some people who were out of piety, or maybe good intent. I know what, people not doing anything, at least there's actually one person, like I can't remember who it was, but he was saying that the people are reading the books of Malik and Abu Hanifa, and they're not reading Quran. So to give them, to make them encourage to read Quran, they made up virtue of the Quran. If you read Quran, this will happen, and this will happen. So people have actually made up stuff just to encourage people to do good deeds, to encourage somebody to fast, to encourage somebody to do this. They actually made up good ahadith with good intentions. So that's one of the reasons that people fabricate hadith. Sometimes because of aqidah. Like for example, you have the ghulat of the Shia. So they would they would do the extreme Shia. They would make up hadith regarding the virtues of who they want to promote. Sometimes you have tazalluf al-hukam. If you want to make like nowadays you want to suck up to the politicians, what do? You have host parties for them, you give them donations. So in those times they would make up some hadith to promote their virtue. Whoever is the leader of the believers, Allah forgive all of his sins. When he performs one salah, Allah will multiply by 10,000 times. Whatever would suit the hukam, they would make up hadith like that. So sometimes that happened. Again, sometimes they were non-Muslims. Non-Muslims, what they would do? Or munafiqun. Or they would actually fabricate hadith to try and destroy and confuse Islam. If you make up something, like for example, nowadays people distort Islam. Instead of distorting it, you just put one form. So nowadays you can't distort it by adding in a hadith. But in those days, it was the early days of codification. They would try to make up stuff that would be like doesn't even make sense to make Islam look bad. Some people would do them, make money. If you got stronger chains, or you got stronger narrations, or you got more things, people will come to you, you will make money, you become famous. So these are some of the reasons why people fabricated a hadith. That's why you get people who lie in a hadith. Okay, so shall we continue from here tomorrow, inshallah. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Nahmaduhu wa nusalli ala rasulihil kareem. So yesterday we discussed what a mawdu' hadith is. Now, and we discussed some of the reasons why people have fabricated a hadith. Now, obviously the ulama, obviously it's not permissible to narrate a mawdu' hadith unless you explain to the person, this is a mawdu' hadith. You can't just narrate it like, oh, the Prophet said this. You have to say, well, there is a fabrication, or there's a hadith which is fabricated in which is reported the Prophet ﷺ. You have to say it's mawdu'. And the ulama have actually gone about collecting the mawdu' hadith. And the benefit of this, the reason of this is that so that we know, the future ulama it makes it easy for us. Oh yes, they have spoken about this hadith. So then they have kutub of mawdu'at. So they actually gone about compiling books in which the fabrications were the known fabrications were compiled in one place. So for future reference, we have this in front of us. Okay, this is mawdu'. This is a fabricated hadith. We know about this. One of them is the Kitabul Mawdu'at of Ibn al-Jawzi rahimahullah. So this is what it looks like, Kitabul Mawdu'at, 4 volumes. So maybe 4 volumes of fabricated ahadith. So obviously we don't come across it anymore because people know that they're mawdu'. So it's like this put away and the layman is saved from this. But they've done the effort, and the ulama have done the effort and collected all of these and worked on them. However, regarding him, some say it's opposite. He's either loose or very strict, meaning he's loose in saying it's mawdu', or very strict in saying some. So he's got some which are not necessarily mawdu' in this book as well. But on the whole, he's done. This is one of the most famous and earliest books on Kitabul on mawdu' ahadith. But some, as I said, he's very lenient in so you can call it lenient or mutashaddid, whatever you call it. Meaning he puts in there, he's very lenient in taking mawdu' ahadith, or he's very strict in making some ahadith or categorize them as mawdu'. And that's why you have footnotes on them, and that will tell you, well, this is one of them. But majority of them are, and this is the base for all future works later on. Everyone following? Okay, so I'm not sure if I explained the word mawdu'. So what we mentioned previously is that the rawi can be kadhib. So if he's kadhib, so we said that if the rawi is kidhb, he's got kidhb, meaning he's proven to lie in the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, then all of his future narrations are called mawdu'. So a mawdu' is any narration that a narrator who has been proven to lie has narrated, is called mawdu'. Okay, so the word mawdu' is any hadith in which any of the narrators is what? Has been thabata kidbuhu. He's lied at least once in a hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So any of his narration is called mawdu'. You got it? Is that clear? And the English equivalent of mawdu' is fabricated. Okay. Now moving on, the next ta'an is fuhshu ghalatihi or ghaflatihi. So these two are to do with dhabt. Fuhsh ghalat, basically, if you look at it here, these are two terms. So what people have said is fuhsh ghalat or kathatul ghaflat. So is if you make a khata fi sama'il hadith wa tahammulihi. So this first one is to do with taking, and it's to do with passing on. What does this mean? If he makes it, so there's two things here, okay? So the top ahadith, if you have proof, so the top two illat, see, here's a list of 10 ta'an, you will see in your book, there's 10 of them. Now from these, some of them are deal breaking, like kidb and tuhmatul kidb. That's it. If you've done this once, you're gone. Because if a person lied once in a hadith, that's it, we don't want to hear from him ever again. And some of these are only deal breakers, and they only affect the rawi's credibility if they occur multiple times. Because everybody makes a mistake. You will find some of the great muhaddithun that, he's made a slight error in this narration. Are you following me? Okay. So when we say here, he makes a mistake in taking the hadith in sama and zabt. When he was taking it and writing it, in there he made a mistake. Okay, that's called, I think I got it the wrong way. This goes over here. So this definition goes over here. This definition goes over here. Okay? So the ghalat is what? So ghafla is when you're taking the hadith. So 1 minute, made a mistake here. Got it wrong way. So in here this is passing on. My mistake, sorry. In passing on, and this is in taking the hadith. I got the definition. So ghafla to ghafla and ghalat. So ghalat comes, I made a mistake, sorry about that. So if he makes abundance of mistakes in taking the hadith, and whenever he takes it, like in his notes, when you compare his notes to the other students' notes, there's lots of mistakes. And many times, then this becomes a problem. If he has made this mistake once, then the hadith will have a specific category, but he himself will not become like writing it off straight away. Are you following me? So in the first ta'an, the first two ta'an to do with adala. So then what will happen in there? Once he has failed this criteria, then forever he's going to that will stick with him forever. His hadith is mawdu', or his hadith is going to be left and he's not going to be taken. In ghafla and ghalat, meaning making a mistake in taking the hadith or making a mistake in conveying the hadith. In two of these, what happens? If this happens multiple times, then he becomes a ta'an in him. If it occurs one-off, then that one hadith itself will have a particular ruling, not the rawi. Are you following me? Do you get what I'm trying to say? So again, if he makes a mistake in taking the hadith, is ghafla. And if he makes a mistake in passing on the hadith, it's called ghalat. And if it happens one-off, you will say that this particular hadith has a default. And we do that the name of this defect. And if this is a constant error, constant feature of all of his hadith, then his zabt will become weak. He will say he's a weak narrator. Okay? Or fisqihi. So you think of the word the fisq being a transgressor. Is this going to be a permanent defect or a temporary defect? This is going to be a permanent defect. If the person does like fisq openly, what does he do? He's committed kaba'ir. Or he constantly commits sagha'ir. Then this person has no regard for deen, so then we can't trust his narrations. So he's openly committed kaba'ir. Openly. Drinking alcohol, committing zina, or leaving salah, not performing salah, or the things like this. Or he continually does minor sins. Then all of these show that his integrity is questionable. So now therefore, this is a permanent fault. Anybody who's fasik, now all of his narrations will have the same ruling. Are you following? Okay. Aw wahmihi. What does wahm mean? He narrates a hadith of an illah. Is it a permanent defect, or is it a temporary defect, or a temporary defect? We say it is a temporary defect. If he narrates one illah, one hadith or two hadiths, or three hadiths of a very large compilation, he's got hundreds and hundreds to narrate, and 2-3 don't have illah, it's okay, that's human, everybody can make a mistake. But if he makes many wahm, he's got lots of wahm, kathatul wahm, many of his hadiths have illah, so many hadiths have illah, he sits in a gathering with Imam Malik, he sits in a gathering with Imam Bukhari, but his narrations have something different than him. Or he always makes his small little mistakes. Then we say now multiple times, now his dhabt is questionable. So if he makes wahm and he makes hadith he narrates riwayat with illah multiple times, then we say now this rawi is what? He is da'if. And if he makes a one-off mistake, that particular hadith will become da'if, but he himself will be still his dhabt will not be affected. Obviously you still have a slight question mark, because obviously dhabt is not like a yes or no, it's a spectrum. So it was slightly from 1,000 on the dhabt category to maybe 990, and more dhabt 950, 960, it'll drop slowly. Okay? Yes? You got it? Okay. Everybody following me? So let's look at that again. So, if you look at it here, we have types of ta'an. We have a ta'an. If the ta'an is related to adala, or the ta'an is related to dhabt. Okay? If it's related to adala, the rawi himself, the defect goes to the rawi. The defect is immediate impact, immediate or direct impact, immediate or direct immediate or direct impact on Rawi. For example, he has what? Kidh, Tuhmatul Kidh, Fisq, or Bid'ah. So immediately we say, well, this person, no good. If he has Dhabt, we say, is it Qaleel? Is it Kathir? Is it Kathir? Or is it Qaleel? If it is Kathir, it will have an impact, it will have an impact on his Dhabt. And if it's Qaleel, the hadith itself will be weak, not the narrator. You get what I'm saying? So, and if you, for example, I don't know if you've seen it, for example, you have scores. So let's say, for example, this is a Dhabt. I'm just trying to oversimplify it. So let's say, for example, you have like a score of 1,000 to 0. So by having multiple, like so many illas, so many wahm, you say, well, he drops down to about here now. On one off, from 1,000, he comes down to about here or here. So you slide, okay, no, he made illal before, he made this mistake before. So therefore, consider this, but it wouldn't make a considerable impact on him, as opposed to constant mistakes. Are you following me? It is clear, making sense? Yes? Now, the next one we have is mukhalafa. What does this mean? Again, this mukhalafa means he narrates hadith contrary to how the thiqat and the strong narrators narrate it. If he does it one-off, then the hadith itself will have a particular category. It become what? Shaz, munkar, mustarib. And if he does it multiple times, then he himself will become, his dhabt will be affected. You say, well, he's no longer got dhabt because he always does it, his hadiths are always contrary to the thiqat. You understand? So this ta'an, this mukhalafa being a ta'an has two aspects. If this mukhalafa occurs frequently, then he becomes what? Majruh. He becomes questionable in dhabt. If it happens one-off, we say, okay, he's fine, but this riwayah is shaz. This riwayah is munkar. Make sense? Okay? You following? And when he does mukhalafa, then it becomes what? Shaz, mustariba, munkar. Okay? So the question is, how do we tell the difference between ghafla and ghafla and ghalat? So ghafla, you say, well, when he heard this hadith, he made a mistake. So you can say, for example, there are 5 students in class. So let me give an example. Let's say I'm a teacher. So I'm dictating to you, and you wrote it wrong. When we compare your notes with the other people in class, there's a mistake in your notes. Yes? So now, is this a mistake? This is what? A ghalat. This is a ghafla. Correct? When you go and teach, you have the correct notes, but you say it wrong. Or you write the notes wrong on your blackboard, or you write the notes wrong in your book. Now, that's called what? Ghalat. Does that make sense? Okay, so that's the difference between ghafla and ghalat. Some have said it's the same thing, but I'm just, yeah, okay. So you got mukhalafa. Now, the next one is jahala. Jahala doesn't mean that he is ignorant. Jahala means we are unaware of him. So if we are unaware of him, we can't form a picture of him. We don't know who he is. And there's more information coming of jahala later on. Majhul, a rawi called majhul. That's coming up later on. Are you following me? Yes? Bid'ah, there's more details coming up bid'ah, but meaning he has bid'ah in his aqidah, and he discusses in detail coming up later on. Or su'i hifdhihi. And su'ul hifdh, that's also coming up later on. Okay? He has a bad memory. So bad memory is also a defect. But the bad memory is going to be what? Is that a temporary defect or permanent defect? If it's proven that he has su'ul hifdh all the time, that will be a long-term defect. Understood? Are you following me? Okay, let's pause here. Okay, so now let's look at this ta'an ibara collectively. Okay, because the ibara is a bit not ambiguous, but it needs a bit of analysis. So now he says here, الطعن إما أن يكون يعني لكذب الراوي أو تحمته بذلك أو فحش غلطه أو غفل فسقه. And then a few lines later he actually says here, أو وهمه أو مخالفته أو جهالته أو بدعته أو سوء حفظه. I give you all of this as a separate list. And then he says, فالأول الموضوع. So he mentions he mentions 10 of them. So let's go through here. We have, what's the 10? كذب الراوي, number 1. Okay, let's do it here at the bottom. That's number 1. Number 1, كذب الراوي. Number 2, tuhmatul rawi. Number 3, fuhsh ghalat. Ghalatihi. Number 5. Number 6. Then we have number 7. We have number 8. We have 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. This is 5. I missed number 4 out. Sorry. Okay? Now let's what we do. The ones relating to his adala, let's circle them in red. What's mutaliq to his adala? Kidh, tuhma, fisq. We have 1, 2, 3. Bid'atihi, 4, and jahalatihi. So these 4 are related to his adala. Jahala is not his fault, it's our fault. We don't know about him. So we can't really say, neutral, we can't say he's good or bad. So therefore, his adala is not known, so we can't really say anything about that. But the other, so 5 of them are linked to his adala. And the other 5, ghalat, how he narrates, how he takes it on, how he narrates it again. And these are to do with his dabt. So we have 10 wujuh of ta'an. And the wujuh of ta'an in adala, once it's established, that's it, the rawi is weak. And then when it comes to dabt, then if the rawi has weak, any of the dabt ones, if these occur, a ghalat occurs, a ghafla occurs, a wahm occurs, a mukhalafa occurs. And then let's do another thing. Let's say here, the ones that are, this is permanent. Su'u hifdhihi, this is, let's put this in red. Because if you have su'ul hifdh, then you will say now that all of his hadiths are weak. As opposed to the others, only if they occur constantly, then he becomes weak. Make sense? So فَالْأَوَّلُ مَوْضُوع, meaning this one here. If the rawi, so the ta'an in rawi is the kidh bil rawi. So if there's a hadith and the rawi is known for lying, then the hadith is called mawdu'. وَالثَّانِي al-matruk. If the rawi, he hasn't been proven to lie in a hadith, but there is very strong circumstantial evidence that he doesn't add up, or he lies in kalamun nas, then his hadith is known as matruk. His hadith is known as what? Matruk. Al-thalith al-munkar. So if a person makes lots of mistakes in narrating a hadith, he says munkar. Similarly, al-munkar ala ra'yin, one opinion. وَكَذَلِكَ الرَّابِعُ وَالْخَامِسُ. الرَّابِعُ وَالْخَامِسُ. So all of these have what? So he's given 5 names here. Now the next 5, he doesn't give a name. It comes up, some of them come out later, some of them come out later on. So if you have a hadith with wahm, some call it mu'allal, and I told you there's a ikhlaf amongst the thing, is it either mu'allal or mu'all? Is it from bab taf'il or bab if'al? Let's leave the nahwa and sarf. You've done that a lot before. You can look at it if you want to. They have different regarding this in the lugha. So then you have mukhalafa. There's no name for mukhalafa. There's no name for bid'ah and su'ul. Now in su'ul hifz, the 10th one here. Yeah. Now, okay. So let's go to it first. In mukhalafa, the rawi doesn't have a particular name. But the particular narration will have a name of shad, munkar, or mustarab. Are you following me? Are you with me here? And if a rawi is majhul, we don't have a particular name for that riwayah or that rawi. It says majhul. If he's mubtadi, it says mubtadi. There's no special name. They say what he's got is what? He's mubtadi. And if he's got su'i hifz, if he's got a permanent, so like basically throughout his life, he's narrated hadith weak. Like he's always made mistakes. Then we say this is what? Su'ul hifz. There's no name for that. But if he developed a weak memory, can't develop memory. If his memory weakened later on, he lost his books, he got injured, his notes got burnt up, he became very ill, then it says here, he becomes mukhtalit. Or the hadith is called mukhtalat. The rawi is mukhtalit. And then the hadith is now mukhtalat. Do you understand? So now in that one, the ashir that has a specific name. So in these things that he's mentioned, these are not saqt. So in saqt we have mursal, mu'allaq, mu'adhal, then before khafi, mudallas, etc. And here this is to do with the ta'an. Now in the ta'an, there's not a name for every single scenario. There's only a name for the first 5. If the rawi is kadhib, mawdu', matruk, tuhmatul kidh, and he makes mistakes in tahammul or ada, it's called munkar. And similarly, if he's a fasiq, he says his hadith is munkar. And the other ones don't have particular, well, if the hadith has a waham, it made a waham, then the hadith is a illa, is mu'all. And the others don't have particular names. They'll just be normal, فيه راوي مجهول لا نعرفه, or مبتدئ, he's a mubtadi', he has bid'ah in his life. Or سوء حفظه, he's what? He's got a weak memory. And if the weak memory is something that occurred after having a strong memory, you say اختلاط, meaning he started mixing things up in his memory because of whatever circumstance occurred. Does this make sense? Yes? Is this clear to everybody? Any question regarding this? Yeah, so the seventh one, Asabi, that also has a name, but it comes at the bottom because I couldn't fit it at the top. So the top 5, the 6th and the 7th, they have names. 8, 9 and 10. 10A doesn't have a name, 10B has a particular name. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, nahmaduhu wa nasalli ala rasulihil kareem. So moving on, we just finishing off. So yesterday we went through some of the ta'an and the names given to those particular ta'an, those that which have a name. Now we came across the word munkar. Now as I said to you before, these sciences were developed naturally, organically. Nobody sat in a lab and classified all of these things. So each muhaddith thought of a word, he put a name for it, then they use it in particular ways. So certain words, they're not concrete in what they mean. So one of the words that you'll have an issue with, meaning you'll have to really understand what is meant by the author when he uses that word, because that word doesn't have a single meaning. It's the word munkar. So based on what we did yesterday, we said the word munkar is any hadith where the rawi has weak dhabt. فَهُشَ غَلَتُهُ أَوْ كَثُرَ غَفْلَتُهُ. And ghalat is to do with ada. And kathura ghaflatuhu is to do with tahammul. Okay? Okay? Or dhahara fisquhu. Or dhahara fisquhu. So if he's got a weak dhabt, meaning the way he does tahammul or the way he does ada, or if he's a fasiq, then this is called munkar. So when you say munkar, it could mean this. Another way munkar is used is what? ما رواه الضعيف مخالفا لما رواه الثقات, i.e. the brother of what? So we have munkar in the opposite of what? Munkaran ma'ruf. And then it's the opposite of shadhan mahfuz. So that's one way munkar is used. So one way is when it has the rawi, so one of them is basically an aib in the adala or the zabt of the rawi. Sometimes the word munkar is used in the meaning of mukhalafa. A third meaning is, so ma rawahu thiqa mukhalifan lima rawahu thiqa. So sometimes the word munkar this is equal to what? Ma rawahu thiqa mukhalifan lima rawahu thiqa. What is this known as in Nukhba? In our text here, this is known as shadh. When a shadh narrator narrates the opposite to more thiqat. So basically in this example, munkar and shadh is what we know as shadh is the same thing. I know it's confusing, but I can't simplify because this is how it's used. So when you see this word being used in different books, different authors, you say, well, when he says munkar, what does he mean? So don't just think, okay, munkar means this, because this is the definitions mentioned in Nukhba, but the ulama before have used different words for different things. And sometimes the word munkar is also ما تفرد به الراوي. هذا حديث منكر لا نعرف إلا من هذا الوجه. تفرد. So تفرد به الراوي, this is basically in the meaning of gharib or fard. But again, usually, but you wouldn't call a munkar, you would say, for example, a gharib or a fard with somebody who's غير thiqa. Somebody who's not thiqa, when he narrates, or he's not thiqa, meaning he's lower than thiqa. When he narrates something, he's a tafarrud, and the meaning is not supported anywhere, no mutabi', no shahid. You also get the word munkar there. Are you following here? So it can be confusing, but you have to know this so that when you see it, for example, you start Tirmidhi, so then you say, well, when Imam Tirmidhi says munkar, he doesn't mean the munkar opposite is ma'ruf. Yes, he may mean a munkar in one of these other 3 forms. So you have to know that munkar is used very commonly in mustalah. And the ulama of hadith have used the word quite commonly. Does everybody see what I'm saying regarding the word munkar? The second and the third are different because the second one is talking about a weak rawi opposing thiqa rawi. And number 3 is talking about thiqa rawi opposing more thiqa rawi. Are you following? So there's a slight difference. So in number 2, this is what we have done in Bayquni as munkar. And in number 3, this is what we call shadh. This is what we know as shadh. But what we know as shadh, when a thiqa rawi narrates something contrary to more thiqat, what we call shadh is also used as munkar sometimes. Are you following? Yes? Okay, so let's summarize from here now. We have maqbool hadith and we have mardood hadith. Now obviously, within what we classify as mardood, there are some, like, not every mardood is rejected, we'll do that later on. But we have mardood, a hadith can be mardood because of 2 reasons. One is because of a saqt, and we done that in the previous lesson. We have saqt zahir, saqt khafi, and then saqt zahir, we have mursal, we have mu'allaq, we have mu'adal, we have munqati', and then saqt khafi, we have mursal khafi, and we have mudallas. Now we're going to ta'an. Now in ta'an there are 10 reasons. Okay, so there are 5 that are linked to adala. So ta'an meaning the rawi has a defect. There are 5 regarding to his integrity and 5 regarding his dhabt. So the 5 regarding integrity are al-kidh. So he has been proven to lie. If a rawi is proven to have lied, what's his hadith called? Mawdu'. That hadith is lied in, and every other hadith is called mawdu'. Tuhmatul kadhib. If the rawi has been accused of lying, then what's his hadith called? Matruk. This hadith is known as matruk. If the rawi has fisk in him, then this hadith is known as munkar. If the rawi has bid'ah, there's no particular name. We would just say the rawi has bid'ah. So we won't have a particular name for the hadith, but say that the rawi is fihi bid'ah. Okay? Jahala, there's no specific name for this as well. You just say here, rawin majhul, fihi majahil, the people who don't know in this sanad, but we no specific name for that. Yes? Are you following me? When there's ghafla, meaning the rawi is his ghafla. So now if you go over here, this is a halfway point. These are to do with dhabt. These are to do with al-adala. And this is not necessarily explicitly adala, but we have a known adala, so we can't comment on this. And these 4 is adala. So you have mawdu', matruk, munkar, and there's no name for bid'ah, a rawi who's mubtadi'. And over here we have dhabt. We have qualities of the ruwat called dhabt. And then there we have ghafla and khata'. In both of these, if the rawi is commonly, and I said to you before, in adala, you don't have to have kathra. You don't have to say he lied often. He's accused of lying often. He does fisk often. Well, kaba'ir is one-off or like openly. Bid'ah often. These are like one-off. So basically, adala is either you have it or you don't have it. You following? Now in the ta'an, the dhabt, these errors, if they happen multiple times, then the rawi becomes questionable. If it happens one-off, then that particular hadith becomes questionable. Do you understand? In here, all of these persons' narrations will be discredited because he doesn't have integrity. And in the dhabt one, if any of these, if a mistake happens in tahammul, a mistake happens in ada, so then we will say, well, does he do this often or does it one-off? Because everybody, yesterday when we go through al-mazid fi muttasil asan, you will see that even some great ulama, sometimes they make an error. We can't say, no, he's da'if. I mean, no, that one hadith of his is now questionable. But generally, he's acceptable. Okay, so if the rawi has ghafla or khata, then we will say often. We say now this rawi is now munkar. So the 3 munkar is used for 3 places. It comes as munkar. If he narrates with waham many times, so any hadith with waham, we say this is an illah. This is an illah, and the hadith becomes mu'all or mu'allal. 2 ways of saying it. You following? And if this occur commonly, if it is often, then the rawi becomes discredited. Do you understand? So look at it this way. We may find a hadith in the books of the Kutub al-Sitta or the reliable books in where there's a rawi who has made a mistake. You can have a riwayah of a person who has done mukhalafa. You may find a riwayah of a person whose memory deteriorated afterwards at the end of his life, in Bukhari or in Muslim or in one of those books. But you'll never find a narrator from any that has these qualities, because these are never accepted. Are you following? But you'll never find a rawi who is often making too many mistakes, too many ghafla, too much khata, too many mukhalafa. Then he's da'if. Are you following me? So the five on that side, the five on that side, if they occur constantly, then the rawi becomes discrediting. And if it occurs one-off, then that's not a problem. So for example, we see example coming up, Abdullah ibn Mubarak. He's a very great muhaddith. Yes, a great faqih as well. But we have an example where there's a dispute between him and, not dispute in terms, but the way the hadith has been narrated. So even there, the ulama have consensus that he has made an error here. He's in mukhalafa. That doesn't mean he's now a da'if rawi. Na'udhu billahi min dhalik. Rahimahullah. Yes, wajazahullahu anna. But it means what? That one hadith is, we say that one hadith is mukhalafa, but here on the whole is fine. And everybody makes mistakes. You following? So the ones on the left side, if they occur constantly, the rawi becomes da'if. And if you get it one off, not a problem. It's just something that you have to work around. Okay? So that's munkar. If it's mukhalafa, then in mukhalafa, then you will have separate names for each, because there are different types of mukhalafa, and each has its own names. And su'ul hifz, there's no particular name for this, but there are two types of su'ul hifz. We'll do that at the end. Is what? Permanent. For permanent, you just say, well, what? This rawi he's got su'ul hifz or sayyul hifz, and if the bad memory developed, we say now he becomes mukhtalit. Mukhtalit, meaning later in his life, what happened now? His memory deteriorated, and because of some incident scenario, something happened to him where his result became weak. So now, what will happen now? We will discuss some of these. We'll go through some of these individually later on in the book. Understood? Everybody following? Any questions? Okay. Subhanallah wa bihamdihi, subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika, wa nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, wa nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk.